So when you are born again, he said, him that is born of God overcometh the world. When a man is born of God, he turns away from the journey of vanity. That part which is a departure from God, he turns away from it and he comes back to focus. He begins to seek Elohim again. He said, whoever is born of God overcometh the world. The word is the word cosmos. What it means is institution. It means government. It means administration. Every protocol that is set in place that provokes a departure from the presence. He said, when you are born again, you begin to live above that protocol. All of a sudden, you come back to that point again where intercourse is reestablished. Now, if you enter into God, you will discover there are three realities that governs the civilization of God. The first reality that governs the civilization of God is the will of God. The second reality that governs the civilization of God is the wisdom of God. The third reality that governs the civilization of God are the purposes of God. This is why your prayer can't change the will of God. Because the will of God existed before you started praying. So your praying is correct when you align with the will of God. Because that reality, it existed before all things. In fact, civilization emanated from that reality. That's why when you do things in your own way, God doesn't hallow it. Before you do anything, he shows you how to do it. Because it's not just about doing it, it's about how it is done. It must be consistent with the wisdom of God for the blessings of God to come upon it. You know, when I was much younger, I thought ministry was about gifts. I was a mighty orator, so I gathered my friends and I told them something is about to happen. And after talking to them for 2 weeks, I now started the program. And when I started the program, I spoke to over 100 people. Only 12 of my friends came. And those who came to sympathize with me because they knew it was a failure. And I now realize there is a strategy beyond human intelligence to bring administration to the purposes of God. If it is not consistent with the will of God, the blessings of God will not rest. I now went back to God and God told me, be here praying. And I prayed there for over 10 years. When I finished praying, that oracle came out of himself. You know God is strange. Have you contemplated for a second that before the beginning God was? Where was God? Before the spirit realm was created, where was God? That means God lived in himself. So God is the house of God and God is God. Now, attempt for a second to imagine God. You will see how futile your brain is. You will discover this tool called your brain in matters of ordination is weak. So you will seek him day and night. Because until that wisdom crystallizes, your brain can't travel too far. He said, pray for long. I was praying, I thought I was wasting time. Meanwhile, that was consistent to my own ordination. Pray! And after I prayed for a long time, he came out from where he dwelt outside time. And he looked upon me. He gave me one instruction. And what happened to me in 3 months was superior to everything that would have happened in 10 years. I now discovered the wisdom of God is superior to human's intelligence. So in the civilization of God, there's the wisdom of God. And in the civilization of God, there are the purposes of God. So your life will not count until you live according to that divine purpose that necessitated your creation. You know, when John went to Zion, he interacted with the 24 elders. Now, these are the beings of wisdom and highest authority in heaven because they are closest to God in proximity to the throne. And when he saw the elders worshiping, the only thing the elders were saying was, holy, holy, holy is the Lord. And then he saw other beasts that were there. And he said they worship day and night forever and ever. And the only thing they were saying is, all things were created for your pleasure. That was when John realized the value of life is not in its longevity. The value of life is in the degree that it gives pleasure to God. Because all things were created for thy pleasure. So when you fulfill purpose, you give pleasure to God. That's why fulfilling purpose becomes an act of worship. But if you don't go to Zion, you won't find it. Because that is not written anywhere in time. You may be on earth and you are laboring because you think the goal is to become something in time. If it is apart from God, it becomes a problem. But if it is in God, it becomes a weapon for kingdom advancement. That's the power of the purposes of God. All of these were locked in God. And these were the things God was teaching Adam. But Adam violated it. So when Adam departed, like Lucifer that fell from the throne of heaven, Adam also became oblivious in understanding of what the will of God is. Adam became depraved in wisdom. So much so that Adam went to cover himself with fig leaves. You can't please a spirit with vegetable. The only thing that pleases a spirit is blood. So when God came, he looked at Adam. Before now, everything you did was correct. Because he named all the animals, and the name he called the animals was the name that was in the archive of heaven. Why all of a sudden you now take an action that is wrong? He had been cut off from the wisdom of God. So God had to come quickly and kill an animal and covered him with the skin of the animal. Because if God doesn't see blood, he will kill you. But Adam had fallen from wisdom. And the third thing, Adam no longer understood purpose. The reason for his existence, he forgot it. And Adam began to struggle to survive. He now thought that life was about survival. Meanwhile, it was never written in the blueprint of Zion that life was about survival. Life was about pleasing God. The moment life becomes about survival, death has entered. Adam had departed from the purposes of God. The reason is because a new government had been established. So when John went back to Zion, you know, there are few men that went to before the beginning. It was Moses that wrote Genesis chapter 1 and said, in the beginning, God. The second person that spoke about the beginning was John. He said, that which was from the beginning. They traveled very far outside time. And when John went and checked, he now came back and said, whoever is born of God. The sign that is born of God, the sign that the protocol of eternal life has been activated, is that he overcomes the world. He has the power over the administration of the world system. He has the power over the enticing implications that the devil litters upon the landscape. He overcomes the world. So a man who has not overcome the world have not learned the secret of existence. The third person that went to before the beginning was Paul. And when Paul went to the beginning, what Paul found was strange. Paul said the code of existence in this age is not breath. In the animal kingdom, the code of existence can be breath. But he said in the quadrant of humankind, he said the code of existence is not breath. He said the code of existence in the quadrant of humankind is God tabernacled in man. So any man who God is not tabernacled on his inside did not exist in this age. Meanwhile, there are many ages in God. There is the angelic age. The Bible said in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So before the earth was created, many heavens had been created. Many beings had existed in heaven. That's why you see the 24 elders, you don't know their origin. That's why you see the 4 beasts, you don't know their origin. That's why you see different categories of angels. Because before the project of man began, God had many projects. And there are different mysteries that govern all of those projects. But he said, in the project of man, what governs it is what? God tabernacled in man. That's why I said, Christ in you, the hope of glory. And the Bible now said, you know, when God began to create Adam, he said, let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion. And the way God created man was that God divided himself. And then he took dust and hid God in dust. So it is God hid in dust that is called man. So man is God hid in dust. Because the mystery of this age is God tabernacling in a man. And Jesus said, this is life eternal. Life is not breath. It's your ability to touch that God that is on your inside. Live by that God that is on your inside. Commune with that God that is on your inside. That was the same thing God was teaching Adam in Genesis 3 verse 8. That if you stop touching me, you stop living. So the greatest preoccupation of a believer is his perpetual contact with God. That's why the code of this age is koinonia. If you have not touched God, you are not alive. And most times, when you don't touch God, the age will overpower you. The government of this world will rule you. This is why many people, God blesses them, the blessing becomes their grave. Because they didn't know the code of this age. How often did you touch him? Or have you touched him? Have you touched him today? So the reason today we count in your existence is not because today was in time. The reason today we count is because even today you touched him. The day you fail to touch him will not appear in your radar in Zion. Your age in the spirit It's not how long you lived in time. Your age in the spirit is how many times you made contact. Because every time you make contact, there's a dot in Zion that this man is still breathing. That's why the moment Adam was expelled, the moment Adam stopped touching him, Adam died. So you can be 90 years old on earth, but in the spirit you are 5 years old. Because cumulatively, your touching him and the impact of your touching him did not transcend beyond 5 years. He said, this is life eternal, that they may know him. That they may know him. That they may know him. Because if you don't touch him, this age will swallow you up. The bank will swallow you up. Abuja will swallow you up. The government will swallow you up. A point will come when it will become difficult to come to church. Because you were tired from work. A point will come when it will become difficult to come into this world because something happened in the office and you are not happy. So you wanted to be alone. And the way you were being alone is by putting an earpiece and hearing a music, a song to saturate your soul. That's not life. That's not life. That's not existence. Because when you look at the wisdom of God from the tablets of heaven, you will discover the only way God. You know, the way spirits define things is different from the way men define things. It's different entirely. So he said, if you don't touch God, this world will swallow you up. And there are many people in cities. They went to cities with God large in their heart. But when they came to the city, the pursuit of things made God became faint. So even when they come to the place of prayer, they look for God, they can't find God. They couldn't touch God. Meanwhile, before they came to the city, even the moment they wake up, an angel is singing and they can hear the sound of heaven. Before they woke up, as they are waking up, there is the Holy Ghost is dancing in their spirit. So they wake up in the morning. They didn't have anything. Yet they wake up. I have a very big God who is always by my side. But they now enter the city. They didn't know that there's a government in that city. They didn't know that there was a prince in that city that have set his quadrant to swallow men. So when they entered the city without an understanding of what life was. So they negated the protocol of intimacy. They negated the requirement of koinonia. So they became big in the city, but God became small on their inside. So like Adam, we exchange the mundane for sacred things. Like Adam, we exchange eternal reality for temporal reality. And Jesus said, if you are like that, you are dead. He said, this is life eternal, that they may know him. How well do you know him? When you wanted to choose your life partner, did you hear his whisper? Did you hear his whisper when you went to the office? That's why we respond like men. Because when things happen, we can't check heaven. We can't consult with heaven. We are no longer of heaven. We have become on earth. We have become of earth. So things on earth, we are competing with people with our minds. No, we are rulers. We don't compete. We rule in this realm. And the reason we can rule here is because we are perpetually connected to Zion. But when you are disconnected from Zion, you begin to compete with that person in the office. How can you compete with somebody in your office when you are a carrier of God? When you know where you woke up from. You woke up from your bedroom. I woke up from the presence. You are coming out of a room. I'm coming from the mountains of Zion. How can I compete with you? It's not possible. But the problem is, men have relocated from heaven. They live on earth. In John chapter 3 verse 13, Jesus was walking in Nazareth. And he said, no man have been to heaven at any time except the Son of Man, which is in heaven. So every day Jesus woke up from the presence. Jesus lived from the present because he knows the code of this age. Christ in you. God tabernacle in man. Aliyah. Aliyah.